What's up, guys? It's Doc B with Doc B Design, and we are back for our next Art 101 video, where today we are going to be going over these guys right here, watercolor palettes. Now, they come in all sorts of different shapes, sizes, forms. They come empty, they come filled with paint, but we're going to show you how to set up your very own watercolor palette and get you ready to paint with watercolors. Now, the reason I'm making this video is I actually had a friend of mine who took a base entry-level watercolor class in college, and they didn't go over this. You'd figure at the start of a watercolor class, they'd show you how to set up your palette. Now, when you first get into watercolors, you're probably going to end up buying something like this. That's what my friend had, a whole bunch of these tubes, and she was just painting with the paint that came out of the tubes. That's actually not how you're supposed to use watercolors. Nothing wrong if you want to use it that way, but you should be using water to get dry paint off of your palette and then painting with that. So when you go to pick out your palette, you're going to want a well or a little container for each tube of paint that you have like this. That way each tube, each color goes into its own container. Now, if the palette doesn't come with wells or little places to hold the paint, it's probably going to come with something that looks a little bit like this guy right here. This is a pan. This one is empty and it's a half pan. There's half pans, there's full pans, and then there's companies that make their own pans that are all sorts of crazy different sizes in between. The next bit of the process really isn't as complex as you would think it is. All you're going to do is take these tubes of paint and put them into your palette or into the half pans or full pans that you have that are empty. As far as the order goes, when you're choosing which colors are going to be next to each other in the palette, it's really up to you. There is no right or wrong, but keep in mind, when you're mixing colors in the palette, you're probably going to want similar colors next to each other, and you're not going to want your really dark colors next to your really light colors where they can get dirty and get contaminated. Now, before you start unloading tubes of paint into your palette, keep in mind that watercolor paint needs to dry. You're going to want to fill your palette or your pans up in small little layers. Let the layer dry, then add more fresh paint on top until the pan is full or the palette well is as full as you want it to be. Things do not have to be filled to the rim, but you're more than welcome to fill them that way if you want it. If you're having trouble getting the paint to settle into the little corners in the palette wells or in the pans, use something like a little toothpick or an unfolded paper clip just to push the paint down into the edges. Now, the reason you set up your paint out of the tubes and into a palette and let them dry before you start painting is you're reactivating that paint with water when you paint with watercolors. So when the paint is dry, it's actually harder to reactivate than when it's already wet. This actually lets you control watercolors a lot better because you can get transparent colors and you can control exactly how much pigment is getting onto your brush. Again, keep in mind that there are tons of different palettes out there. Myself, I have a studio palette that never leaves this room that I'm in right now. I have multiple travel palettes. I have my own palettes that I make with my own custom colors in them, and sometimes I even set up a brand new palette for a new piece that I'm painting if I want to limit myself to certain colors or make sure that I'm using a range of specific colors. When it comes to setting up your own watercolor palette to paint with, that's really all there is to it. You're squeezing tubes of paint into a palette, into wells, into empty pans, letting it dry, and coming back and painting with them later. I know this might seem like a kind of an obvious or goofy video to make, but this is stuff that they are not covering in college level introductory art classes. I hope this video helps some of you guys out. I hope it can help some new artists out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them under the video below or reach out to me on social media. We will see you guys next time. This is all for Art 101 today. I am Doc B, and we are out of here.